Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good. Just time for another tournament history story here, and actually this one's not really tournament related, although it's sort of in between tournament related. But it was sort of like, oh man, this one's sort of a hard one to explain a little bit because it was so really off the wall. But here what the deal was with that, what we're talking about on this particular incident. Um, this happened in 1992. Um, Back then, I just turned 30 years old. I was at the top of my game. I was really doing good in the tournaments. I was on a roll on the Bassmaster top 150 circuit, top 100, top 150 circuit, doing really good. Winning some tournaments, placing high in a lot of tournaments, qualifying for the classic, and a lot of times what happens, when you're young like that, when you're young and like I had long hair and you're doing good in tournaments, tournament organizations, they sort of like, uh, they'll get a handful of anglers that they really want to get behind and promote. And I was in that category at that time, just, young, getting started, doing good in tournaments. And every tournament circuit sort of has like, some poster kids, I guess it was. It's always been like that. It was back like that in the 80s. It's like that today, and it was like back then. But that was sort of my time in the sun back in the early 90s, like that, where I had a lot of opportunities. And what had happened in this particular opportunity, there was this big magazine out of New York City called Details Magazine. This magazine was, I'm not even sure if it's around anymore, but it's very similar to GQ magazine, Gentleman's Quarterly. Some of the the fashion type magazine, high end, like, really, like advertisements from Paris, and just designed for story. It had a storyboard to it, but there's a lot of advertising as far as like, yeah, designing styles. It's a magazine you wouldn't think that have anything to do with bass fishing. But anyway, one of the writers for Details magazine was interested, basically, on doing a story on bass fishing. And so this guy, he contacted the Bassmaster organization, and they basically wanted to, interview or do the story surrounding a couple different anglers, and myself was the main character in this particular story that they wanted to do. So the Bass or the Bass, I guess she would have been the marketing manager for Bass at the time, Ann Lewis, contacted me and said that this writer from a New York magazine wanted to do a story on me, and I said, sure, that sounds great. So over the course of like the next 3 months, this writer from New York traveled to the tournaments with me, and this, I can't believe they put that much detail or that much effort into just one article that was going to be in the magazine. But and this was, like I said, a pretty big deal at the time, because this guy that was doing the story on me, he was also doing a story at the same time on Sharon Stone, the actress, who had just got done with that real famous movie she did called Basic Instinct. So he was going back and forth between doing a story with Sharon Stone and myself, back and forth from California and all over the country where I was fishing. He was literally traveling with me for a while. So the story developed. He was trying to sort of figure an angle he wanted to do with it. So the story sort of developed that he wanted to do this story based upon a lot of my environmental efforts, and a lot of my the ways that I fish that had a lot to do with like Native American philosophy, nature, as far as increasing your awareness for nature, or becoming one with your environment. And basically, a lot of the ways that I fish then and even now, it has a lot to do with that Native American philosophy of basically, respecting the earth and respecting the other creatures that we share this planet with, and basically being aware of your surroundings, and being respectful for everything else that is in nature, and being grateful for it at the same time. So that's sort of the way that, you know, I've always approached my fishing for the past 40 years or so, is from this more pure nature, primal awareness level. And so he sort of wanted to do that. So we sort of formed, you know, the gist of the article around that, as far as the sort of my connection with the Native American philosophy in my fishing, which was very successful at the time. So we did this article went on. What are you doing there? Are you listening to Dad out here? What are you doing? What are you doing there? Elijah come over and said hi there. So anyway, this went on for, you know, like I said, probably, you know, several months. Come into all the tournaments here. You can go play with your toys? Yeah. You can go play with your boat and truck? Yeah. Go ahead, go play with your boat and truck. Okay, see you in a little bit. Go play with Sage. So, you know, the story basically ran its course. He, you know, wrote the story, came up with it. And after he was finished with the story, you know, Bassmaster called me again, Ann Lewis, and he said that, okay, in addition to the story, what they want to do is they need to do a photo shoot with you, as far as getting photographs, you know, for the story, which was, yeah, so no big deal. So anyway, they sent another photographer from New York, Bass did, and the magazine Details, down to the tournament we were at Lake Lanier in Georgia, 1992. And he, you know, he was taking the pictures, different nature shots and that type of stuff. And what he wanted to do, he said, okay, what we want to do in this particular photo, he said, we're talking about how, you know, you really strive to sort of become one with nature, and to be part of your environment, and to be in tune with your environment. I think what it would be a really good photo if we got a picture of you standing on your boat, looking off into the distance with no clothes on, from behind. Obviously nobody could see you. And he says, what we'll do is we'll backlight it. You know, the photo will be, you know, real darkened, so you're not going to be able to see anything at all. So you know, but he said this is really going to convey the you know, the story. You know, it'll really, you know, tie in with the story good, about you're in nature, you know, you're one with nature, you know, you're unencumbered by, you know, you know, by clothes. You're just out there in the environment. So I'm like, oh, and you got to remember, I'm 30 years old, 29, 30 years old at the time. So, you know, we grow wiser as time goes on. So I said, yeah, sure, it's agreed. You know, the way he explained it, it was going to be fine. And like I said, this dude was writing an article on Sharon Stone at the same time, so I knew everything was legitimate. So anyway, he took the photographs and everything, and they went on their way. So anyway, fast forward probably another month or two, and the magazine comes out, Details magazine. And so I get this magazine, and you know, Sharon Stone's on the front of the magazine. You know, she's the star of it. And then there's, you know, I'm the second headline on this particular story. I open the magazine and I'm thumbing through, and there's several pictures of me holding fish up. And then I get to the back page, and there's a picture of me standing on the front deck of my boat, completely naked from behind. They can't see anything on the front, but it's a picture of me. He was on the back deck. He took a picture of me on the front deck looking out at the water, but, you know, with no clothes on, but it was not backlit. It was like bright as day. It's just like, you know, it's like he took a photograph during the middle of the day standing out there naked in the boat. And I'm like, oh man, this is going to be. So anyway, at this point, you know, the magazine's out and everything. And I started getting some feedback. You know, people really didn't know what to think about it. It's like, oh man, Randy, what were you thinking? You know, I had a couple sponsors. I remember Nina Wood said something to some people. It's like, Randy, what were you doing? You know, what were you thinking about that? And like I said, you got to remember, this was a national, probably an international magazine. They probably had, you know, subscribers in Europe and everything. So they, you know, Bass thought that now this is, you got to remember, this was back in 1992. This was like pre-Michael Iaconelli. This was back when bass fishing was pretty conservative sport, and, you know, people didn't. It's like any type of variation from like, you know, just a straight-laced all-American bass fisherman. Any variation from that was just not tolerated hardly. So this was, like I said, this was 30 years ago. So bass, they were a little bit nervous about it too, as far as the reaction it was going to have, from the press and everybody. So Bass hired a like it was like one of those crisis management people. This guy, he was a lieutenant colonel, former lieutenant colonel in the Navy, and that's what he did. Is he basically handled if like athletes or people like that were involved in some type of a scandal, he would like coach them and give them advice on how to handle that particular situation. So they hired this this scandal professional to meet with me. It's like how to basically deal when people would ask you questions about this. And as it turned out, everything blew over, and everybody took it in pretty good spirits. And believe me, I was ribbed about it by the guys for years and years and years, about posing naked in that magazine. But it was one of those things that we all we all do stuff we probably would regret, and not that it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't. If you ever get a chance, you can probably Google it, Details Magazine 1992, and actually see it. There was nothing bad about it. It was very PG as far as the photo, but still, back in 1992, to have a bass fisherman, standing in their boat with no clothes on was just something that was just sort of unacceptable. But as it turned out, I didn't lose any sponsors from it. Everybody sort of got a good laugh out of it, moving forward years later. And I just look back on it and sort of laugh now about how that went. But anyway, that was the story of me posing nude for a magazine. So anyway, just wanted to share that and get away from the tournament stories a little bit. And like I said, hope you enjoyed it, but it was sort of funny at the time. So anyway, we'll talk to y'all later. See you.